Hi, and welcome to Extra Serving, an award-winning product of Nation's Restaurant News. I'm your host, Holly Petre. Today we're going to be talking about the labor picture, which seems to be more optimistic than in months prior. It seems like people are applying for jobs according to industry studies, and the jobs picture from the Department of Labor also seems to be improving. While there's optimism, the labor picture is looking different across the country. We'll be discussing more coming up. Also, we'll be talking about the Happy Customer Index, a new program from Nation's Restaurant News. I won't spoil too much, so you'll just have to wait and see. Finally, we'll be talking about dynamic pricing. It seems like the word of the minute is dynamic pricing. Noodles and Company is actually testing it in a few markets. The fast casual chain will be using new digital menu boards to test different pricing throughout the day, by market, by tier, and by menu item. Will other chains follow suit? This week's guests are Becky Boyd, Director of Menu Innovation and Strategy at Bloomin' Brands, and Chef Ephraim Cutler, Vice President for Research and Development at Bloomin' Brands. Now it's time to introduce my lovely, lovely co-hosts.
I am Sam Oches, Editor-in-Chief of Nation's Restaurant News.
And I'm Leigh Zinsmeister, Managing Editor of Nation's Restaurant News.
And now it's time to throw it over to today's sponsor. Belgioioso Cheese is a family-owned and operated company specializing in artisan Italian cheesemaking. Using only natural ingredients and fresh, local Wisconsin milk, master cheesemakers handcraft a full line of exceptional cheeses, guided by a commitment to quality and a respect for tradition. Ask your distributor about Belgioioso's award-winning fresh mozzarella, burrata, ricotta, mascarpone, American grana, and Parmesan. At Belgioioso, every cheese is a specialty. All right, guys. Well, here we are. I have my Taco Bell. Everything's great.
That's all it takes with you, huh?
Big day for Holly.
Big day for Holly. She has her Taco Bell. Everything's doing right over here. How are you guys doing?
Oh, just dandy.
Do we get Spicy Sam today?
Huh?
I said, do we get Spicy Sam today?
Oh, maybe. I don't know. I think I'm more like sad Sam. It's too cold. I want spring. I want warmth. Leanne and I are getting ready to go to Los Angeles. And I looked at the forecast in Los Angeles, and it's 55 and raining. So I'm like getting out of Ohio in the cold finally, and I'm going to L.A. where it's basically not that much warmer. Thanks, L.A., for nothing.
I'm flying to LA tomorrow, a couple days ahead of our event, and it's going to be in the 60s over the weekend. So, like, not a lot better, but...
Yeah, it's better than
Why is it so cold
30.
over there?
Atmospheric river, I believe, is the term that they're using. Poor California has really taken a hit the last couple months. Yeah.
I don't know if you've heard of this thing called climate change.
El Nino, right? Isn't it El Nino this year?
I don't know.
You're asking the wrong people.
TBH. No idea. I, too, am freezing my butt off on the East Coast, so...
I had to turn my heater off for this to get good sound quality, so I'm really freezing over here.
We're doing such a quintessential professional thing. We're starting our thing with a talk about the weather. Go us. We're all old now. Hooray!
Oh, no.
I am old now. Holly, officially.
Are you even 30 yet? You're not even out of your 20s.
It's true, but she did have a birthday last week.
That's true.
And now I'm old.
29?
Not really how that works.
29.
Okay, last year your 20s. Yep, next year it's coming for you.
Yeah, next year you guys will really see me just spiral down. Slowly but surely.
I can't even imagine what that's going to look like.
I was going to say, this isn't spiraling right now, what you've been doing the last several months? Oh, okay.
Nope, it's going to start next year.
Yeah, so just get ready for that. Put on your seatbelts. It's going to be a bumpy ride.
Big yikes.
All right, let's talk about some food news.
Okay.
Please.
Let's start with the, what should we start with? Let's start with the labor picture. I made the decision. Let's start with the labor picture.
Cool.
Sounds good.
So our colleague Alicia Kelso recently wrote a story about how it's looking optimistic. She is an optimistic person, so she is also looking at it from a different way than we are. But she did say that it's looking more optimistic, that people are hiring, that people are applying to jobs, that it seems that people are just looking for more jobs than they were before, and they seem to be applying and getting them, and people are more staffed. I mean, it does seem better, and I'm not an optimistic person, and I'm saying it seems more optimistic. So I'm agreeing with Alicia here. What do you guys think?
Well, I think that one man's economic turmoil is another man's optimism, because it's sort of a mixed bag. And yes, in the restaurant industry, I do think that it's optimistic to look around and see what's going on and think, yeah, okay, labor situation is easing up. However, that is at the expense of, the tech industry and a lot of the other industries, because part of the reason for optimism in labor is that there have been mass layoffs, and the tech sector in particular is laying off just a ton of people. Facebook earlier this week announced they were going to lay off, I think, another 10,000 people, something like that. And of course, as we speak, there are the Silicon Valley Bank failed earlier this week. Credit Suisse is talking about how they've got some instability. We're just looking at some scary reverberations from 2008 as the banks kind of show signs of being a little bit unstable. So all of that is not good. But as we all know, it can lead to the labor situation being better for the restaurant industry. So I guess just kind of depends on how you look at things.
Yeah, the data on that is actually really funny. So there's been a 123% increase in candidates in the restaurant industry who are over the age of 30, and a 3% decrease in candidates who are under the age of 19. So, very clearly, and that's for Q4 22 versus Q4 21. So very clearly, these are people who I think have lost their jobs or left their jobs to work in food service, which, again, great for restaurants right now, especially given where we've come from. But I think this isn't just a case of Alicia being an optimistic person. I mean, there's data to back this up. The NRA predicts that the industry will add 500,000 jobs this year, which is great. And almost every single earnings call that we listened to in the last few weeks has indicated optimism. Restaurants are getting back to 2019 staffing levels. They're able to open more stores. Finally, for a long time, we kept hearing executives say, we want to open more stores, but we can't. We don't have people to staff them. So things look good for restaurants, and maybe we can hang on to that, as the economy eventually rights itself. I think that the restaurant industry will probably stabilize in a good way.
And ultimately, there's been a lot of talk this year, including from Mark Zuckerberg, and in announcing the layoffs at Facebook, he said he deemed 2023 the year of efficiency. And I saw that and I laughed because I was like, wow, that's what I'm hearing from restaurant companies too. Everybody's talking about efficiency, and that this year, compared to 2020, 21 for the tech industry anyway, there was this time of, mass hiring in the tech sector, ton of money poured into growth because especially technology in the throes of the pandemic, they just saw a lot of opportunity. And then this year they're like, okay, we got to really pull back. We kind of went too big 2 years ago. Now we got to pull back. Now we got to get more efficient. A little different from the restaurant industry, of course, that 2 years ago was not a time of great hiring and investment. However, the restaurant industry did invest in a lot of technology. It did, really change the operational model a lot. There was a lot of change that happened a couple of years ago that this year they're reevaluating. They're looking for efficiencies. All of that is to say, in looking for efficiencies, in finding technology, integrating your tech platforms, really making sure you simplify your tech stack so that you don't have unnecessary bells and whistles, there is ability to save on labor. So between having technology and strategies that help you save on labor and then having more people in the labor pool to hire, all around that leads to a much more rosy picture for the restaurant industry when it comes to hiring and labor. I think the trick is obviously going to be retention, because yes, the labor pool is deeper. Yes, there are more candidates available. Yes, people over 30 and over 20 are looking for food service jobs at increased numbers. However, those are not typically people looking for a career in food service. Those are not people that are likely to stick around for very long. They're probably going to spring for the next tech job or whatever comes their way. So I do think this is an opportunity for restaurants to, shore up where they lacked employees. To Leanne's point, they can open the restaurants they wanted to open that had been put on hold. However, think about retention. Think about how these talented people you're hiring and perhaps overqualified employees you're hiring, show them why this can be also a career. Show them why this can be long-term. And that's not just in pay, obviously. That's also in the skill set that they bring to the table.
Yeah, that's a super interesting point to think about retention as well when you're having this bigger hiring push of people who are at a different age set than we're used to when it comes to restaurants. I mean, people in their 30s are usually looking for that career point in restaurants. They're usually looking for that manager role, that general manager role. And so we have this really interesting mix of people who are coming into maybe a line cook job or coming into a cashier position. And do they want to grow at the company or do they not? And that's something that's really interesting to think about, Sam. So I'm curious to kind of see what companies are going to do in response to that. We've seen a lot of people have issues with retention. Lately, we've seen a lot of people have issues with unionization, which is another issue that's come from the lack of labor. So, I mean, I think it'll just be fascinating to watch and see exactly what comes of all of this hiring.
Last thing I'd say, too, is that franchising will probably explode, because franchising is another thing where somebody loses their job in the tech sector and say they had a nice cushy job in the tech sector. They've got a nice little savings stored up. They might go look to invest that in franchising. So that's another area I'd expect to grow in the coming year.
Yeah, I was going to say, I feel like we're also hearing a lot more stories these days about GMs and franchisees and such who started, in the back of the house and have worked their way up. And so this is a great opportunity for restaurant companies to show their new employees who might be overqualified for the jobs that they have why restaurants are a great place to build a career and work their way up and become those managers instead of jumping ship as soon as, tech figures itself out.
I got to tell you, too, we've been, doing, we are about to unveil our power list here in a couple of weeks.
I was going to suggest plugging it, too.
Too much of it. Yeah, but, we are about to unveil our power list, and we are going to focus on general managers. We're going to have 25 all-star general managers from around the industry. More to come. You'll find that in a couple weeks at NRN. But one thing that has come up a lot as we've prepared for this report and done the reporting is, and just something that's just come up a lot in my conversations with people, is how much money you can make as a general manager in the restaurant industry. I mean, it's kind of astounding, especially I've talked to a couple of people recently who've done these equity programs with their general managers to, give them buy-in to the restaurant, to the success of the restaurant, to ensure they do a good job. I mean, you've got some restaurants that are paying out $200,000 to their general managers, which is all to say, as we see a lot of people coming out of the tech sector, they might be, accustomed to a six-figure income, and oh no, food service like impossibly. As we all know, people listening to this podcast know, you can make six figures in the food service industry too. Point being here is that you have to, again, find those ways to appeal to people from the other sectors and, again, show them why food service is a career. These equity programs, those are, I think, a really fabulous way to do that, to say, hey, if you come in here and you succeed, we'll give you a cut of the profits, but obviously you have to focus on profitability and increase profitability in order to get any of that. So lots of opportunity here for restaurants. And yes, optimism for labor, optimism for the industry. I would not say optimism for the economy at the moment.
So I'm gonna kind of jump around a little bit, because one way that people are kind of dealing with all of this is dynamic pricing. We've heard about it a lot. We've seen it. Some people do it. Some people haven't do it. We've seen indies play around with it, but now we're seeing Noodles and Company really test it out on a larger scale. And they're planning on using these new digital menu boards that they're spending like $10 million on, to really build out this suite of boards that can change pricing depending on the time of the day, depending on the menu item, depending on the region. And so we already know that companies change their prices depending on region, depending on delivery options. But this is a new way of really introducing price changes throughout the day. I mean, you think about walking into a store and something is $9.99 at 10 a.m., but it's $10.49 at 11:30, and at noon it's $13 because they're changing the pricing depending on how busy it is, depending on how, I mean, the possibilities are endless, and I feel like I have so many thoughts about it, but I want to hear both of your thoughts too.
I think it's great. I'm optimistic about it. Dynamic pricing is something that's been around for so long. I mean, we pay different prices for airline tickets based on various factors, cars in New York, Ubers and whatnot. Even in the restaurant.
Hey, Leanne, they have Ubers in other parts of the country.
Huh. Okay, Sam. Do you take them all the time?
Do you want me to tell you my Uber from Detroit to Toledo story again? I can do it, but I'm not going to.
No.
Our audience does not need to hear that.
Never again tell me that story. I'm sure I'll hear it as soon as we jump in an Uber next week in LA. But
absolutely.
Anyway, even it within the food service industry, it's something that's practiced by third-party delivery services. So really, it's almost like overdue for restaurants to start playing around with this. We've seen, like you said, Holly, a lot of indies and smaller brands playing around with it. And now Noodles and Company is really, I think, probably going to be the first of a lot of brands to experiment with dynamic pricing. I think there's a lot of opportunity here. Not only is there a chance to make a little more profit off of your busy hours, but there's a chance to increase traffic during your slower times by lowering the prices. Like, hey, if you come in at 10:30 and pick up your lunch, it'll save you a couple bucks versus coming in at noon to get your food right when you're going to eat it.
And you can let it sit on your desk like Holly does.
Yeah. Come get your Taco Bell Crunch Wrap now and eat it in 4 hours. Yeah, do you hear that, guys? Please, for the love of God, everybody, keep it in your fridge. I'm just looking forward to this afternoon when Holly tells me she has a tummy ache. But anyway, I think there's a ton of opportunity here. I'm looking forward to seeing how it plays out for Noodles and Company. I'm also not terribly surprised to see Noodles be the first big brand we see play around with this. They have not been shy about playing around with pricing strategies. They had a chicken surcharge for a while when there were supply chain issues. Or, rather bigger supply chain issues than we currently have. And things like that. They're a brand that's not afraid to play around with different things. We've also seen a lot of other brands upgrading to digital menu boards. For example, I believe KFC is doing it. And those brands haven't mentioned dynamic pricing, but I feel like that's the next natural step in this pricing evolution.
Yeah, I do think the tech evolution of the last couple of years is why we're all talking about dynamic pricing right now, because the move toward digital menu boards, digital ordering, that has created the capacity to consider dynamic pricing. I mean, I think the reason dynamic pricing has not worked before is a couple of reasons. First, just the fact that if you have a static menu board, it just doesn't make any sense. But second off is the low prices of the restaurant industry. I mean, when the airlines, go back and forth between like $300 and $275, by comparison's sake, you don't think that $25, that's not too big a deal. You can't do that in the restaurant industry, right? I mean, so like for comparison, that $7 sandwich is going to be $6.50, right? Like, and I think that it doesn't make as much sense when you're dealing with some of these value-oriented prices as it does where you have these big purchases such as a flight or a car or something along those lines. However, for all the reasons Leanne just mentioned, it does make a lot of sense to be able to affect parts of your businesses and increase profitability and find opportunity in places you might not expect. So, for example, in a day part that is usually pretty light in business, or, I mean, some companies have been doing this before, but figuring out new strategies on like a rainy day. The fact that technology exists now to be able to instantly update your prices, for example, when it's raining, because rainy days are often slow business days for restaurants because people don't want to leave their house. You can do those kinds of things a lot more instantaneously. So I agree Noodles and Company is probably going to be the first major chain to be able to pull this off. I agree that they're a very innovative company. I think if they can do it, then it's proof a lot of the fast casuals especially can do it. Because again, we're talking about more value-oriented prices. And I think it can be done. But I also would caution that I don't think this is the future of the restaurant industry. I don't think it's going to take on in a major way. And I think about this in terms of, like, for example, when I was in college, I used to go get a junior bacon cheeseburger from Wendy's like all the time, like drive through at midnight because here I am living my best life in college. Two junior bacon cheeseburgers, fries, and a Frosty. Like that was 2 or 3 times a week. I would do that at one stretch of my life. Do not judge me. But at that time in my life, junior bacon cheeseburgers were 99 cents. And oh my gosh, I pull out of the Wendy's drive-thru. I'm spending, less than $5 as a college student on a budget. Like this was incredible. And I remember the day they increased the prices to $1.29. Oh, I mean, suddenly everything has changed for me, and it was egregious in my mind at that time, right? So my point in saying all that is I do think, especially in the QSR sector, prices, I mean, there's been data on this before that McDonald's, when they increase the price of like a Big Mac by a quarter, it has a major effect on sales because people do not want to shell out that extra quarter for the Big Mac. They've been expecting to pay a certain amount for it. And so that's why I think in certain sectors, this isn't really going to work. You can play around with it. I think companies should test it just to see, because again, if you drop the price of your signature item by $1 at a slow time of the day, you could get some extra. Business. I mean, it's essentially another form of discounting if you're doing something like that. So I think it could work, but I just think prices are a lot more sensitive to people in food service than they are for example, airlines. And so testing, yes, very interesting. I'll be really fascinated to watch Noodles and Company do this, but just caveat that this is probably not for every restaurant.
When I was in college, I used to go to Noodles and Company. So there's my college food story.
You would have loved dynamic pricing.
Well, no, I had class, so I would have been there at the same time anyways. I would have been there at noon for at the high price point.
See, jack up your prices when the college kids are around.
Well, you think about, late night menus.
Those wealthy college kids.
Well, that's just the point, right? I mean, late night menu, you could totally drop prices late at night if you have college campus locations. This is exactly what dynamic pricing is all about. You're going to hook them, but then you increase prices during the lunch day part, and they come back and they're like, well, I don't want to pay for that necessarily. So it's an interesting approach.
Yeah, I'm curious to see how people are going to react when prices are changed and they're like, oh, well, it's more expensive, so I don't want to go now. I wonder if that's really going to deter a lot of people from going there at certain times or going there at all.
Well, and that's an interesting point, because how much are you communicating your dynamic pricing? Because say somebody walks into a Noodles and Company and the prices are lower than they expect. They're like, whoa, Noodles and Company dropped their prices. That's awesome. They come back a couple days later at lunchtime and prices are back. Wait a second. What happened? Because company, and I don't expect companies to communicate. They're not going to tell customers what they're doing. The hope is that people just come to realize this is just a thing that happens now, similar to when, if you look at the prices of a flight to Los Angeles today, it'll be different than the prices for a flight to Los Angeles tomorrow, right? I don't know. Customers could revolt. These are, again, sensitive prices. For fast food especially, are sensitive to people. And let's also not forget how many people do rely on fast food to just afford food for their family. You can't play with it too much, or else you could really lose a core customer who doesn't want to see these things bounce up and down.
Right, exactly. I mean, I think that's going to be the interesting part is, especially in QSR, I don't really think it's possible in QSR. That's just like you were saying, Sam. I don't think it's going to be something that catches on. I think it's going to be more of a fast cash thing, and maybe even casual dining. I could see casual dining catching on, though they have, like with their QR code menus, they could definitely pull off something like this now that they all have QR codes and they have these menus that are on a digital format. They're not on a digital menu board, but they're on a digital format, and they can play around just like they could play around with menu items, they could play around with prices too, pretty easily on those. So I could see it catching on I could even see it catching on more in casual dining than I could see it catching on fast cash, because it will thin crowds out. What were you going to say, Sam?
Well, the last thing I was going to say about that too, just reminded me of what you were saying there, Holly, is that we just did a LinkedIn Live with Carl Orsborn and Meredith Sandlin of Delivering the Digital Restaurant. They wrote a follow-up book. That's a perfect time for my dog Charlie to shake her collar. Great times. She read the book. She
big fan.
Anyway,
she's a fan.
Yeah, she's a fan. But the point is like they kept talking about, the future of digital restaurants is e-commerce. And what they mean by that is, imagine what Amazon is doing. That's what restaurants can do. A digital restaurant can take an approach like an Amazon, where the amount of data you get and the amount of technology at your fingertips, you can influence every person's experience with your brand is essentially personalized. And if I go to Amazon right now, the point Carl made on that call is, if I go to Amazon right now, it's going to look different than what either of you are going to look at Amazon on your phones, right? So restaurants can do that too. Dynamic pricing plays a role in this, right? Because it's like, I'm looking at my restaurant app at this time of day. I know that Sam usually orders burgers at this time of the day. Therefore, I'm going to throw out a lower price point. So all of this is playing into, I think, the future of digital restaurants. So it'll be really interesting to see if people go this direction.
And personalization. I mean, it's almost like a different kind of loyalty app, where like if you come in all the time at a certain time, then you're always going to get this price, or they're going to lower the price for you. If you like, it could just be a very personalized experience where they could say, oh, you know what? Hey, if you come in today at 11 o'clock, we're going to lower the price to this for you, especially for you. Like, as opposed to having it on like a big digital menu board and you just show your phone and it says, I want my price to be XYZ right now. This is what my phone told me. Like, it could be a whole new version of a loyalty program. I feel like it really opens up the door for a lot of things, dynamic pricing. They were nodding, audience. Don't worry. They were agreeing with me. They may not have said it verbally since we're on a podcast, but they were nodding.
That was just an exclusive for our YouTube viewers.
Yes, that's right. We gotta give some extra content to our YouTube fans, Holly. That's what we do with our.
Yes, with your stoic nod. All right, so let's talk about the Happy Customer Index. Sam, I'm going to throw it over to you to explain what this is and what this new project is that we're doing.
Sure. So we launched this with our March issue, and it is now available on NRN.com. If you head over there, what you can find is this new report. We've partnered with Merchant Centric on a report that is tapping into the data that they have. They could explain this a lot better than I could, but they have an algorithm where they can collect all of the sentiment data from across the review sites online to basically measure which restaurant companies do the best job at, having strong customer sentiment, at customer satisfaction. So we've partnered with them to do a quarterly index where we are taking a look at different categories and measuring the happiness of the customers in that category. So we are launching with a fast casual category. This index is measuring 10 established brands that have the best customer satisfaction and 10 emerging brands that have the best customer satisfaction. So we have 20 fast casuals that we have scores for. Go check it out at NRN.com. Again, it's the Happy Customer Index, and what it is measuring, their scores basically take into account customer satisfaction around food, value, and their likeliness to refer to a friend. So their loyalty to a company, and it measures all these things to determine how happy customers are at each of these brands. And there are brands on there that, frankly, there are brands on there I'd never heard of on the emerging brand category that are just really knocking it out of the park. So go check that out, because I think it offers a great benchmark on how to have happy customers, what you can do to create a great experience that customers want to come and enjoy.
Any thoughts, Leigh?
Yeah, over the coming months, we're going to be taking a deeper dive into a lot of these brands. We're going to talk to them, their executives. How do you do it? So this isn't just data. This isn't just these brands make customers happy. This is, here's how you can learn from these brands to make your customers happy. So it's going to be a really great projects. So we talked about fast casuals this month. Next quarter, we're going to talk about family dining chains. We'll work our way through all the segments. So I'm really excited about this.
Which, interestingly enough, I feel like that also pulls right into our GM power list, because we're talking about what makes a lot of these restaurants shine. And a lot of times it is the GMs, and talking with them. I've been talking with a lot of them, and they've really been talking about that they're the heart of this restaurant, and that the executives are saying they are the heart of this restaurant. They're the beating heart. And I feel like it's just people a lot of the times that really are the reason why you have such good scores or why you're getting such good satisfaction. And I feel like it's a lot of the time the people, which ties into our labor picture that we were talking about today. I mean, I feel like this is really the bow on top of everything that we were talking about.
Well, it's a good reminder that at the end of the day, success is at the store level. We spend a lot of our time talking to executives and talking about big picture strategy and about national trends. But the fact of the matter is you are activating your business at the local level within each individual restaurant. And a general manager is the head of that restaurant. They're in charge of that success, of the unit economics, of the good customer service, of the team culture that they've built. And the happiness reflected from the customers is from their visits to the local restaurants. It's not how I enjoy this brand as I see them across social media and then in marketing and the impression I get from my friends. It is the experience I had having a meal there. It sounds really basic, but it is a good reminder that if you really want to succeed as a restaurant company, you have to focus on every single individual restaurant, the performance of each individual restaurant, the people staffing each individual restaurant, because at the end of the day, that's going to be the determination of your success.
Well, we did it. We've once again done it, guys.
Did
Go
another
team.
podcast, another week in the books.
Well, congratulations, guys. Thank you for joining me. And I'm going to throw it over to Brett, who interviewed Becky Boyd, the Director of Menu Innovation and Strategy at Bloomin' Brands, and Chef Ephraim Cutler, Vice President for Research and Development at Bloomin' Brands. Should be a fun episode.
Sounds like it. Congratulations to
Yep.
you too, Holly. I don't know what we're congratulating each other for, but really well done.
We survived a half-hour conversation with each other. We should all be proud of ourselves.
You don't always leave these conversations smiling, so
It's very true.
well done, team.
Well done. Well, thank you guys again. And I'm going to turn it over to Brett.
Thanks, Holly.
Okay.
Belgioioso Cheese is a family-owned and operated company specializing in artisan Italian cheesemaking. Using only natural ingredients and fresh, local Wisconsin milk, master cheesemakers handcraft a full line of exceptional cheeses, guided by a commitment to quality and a respect for tradition. Ask your distributor about Belgioioso's award-winning fresh mozzarella, burrata, ricotta, mascarpone, American grana, and Parmesan. At Belgioioso, every cheese is a specialty.
So I have Becky Boyd, Director of Menu Innovation and Strategy at Bloomin' Brands, and Ephraim Cutler, Vice President for Research and Development at Bloomin' Brands. So are you both in charge of all of the brands?
Yes, that's correct.
So that is Outback and Carrabba's and Fleming's and Bonefish Grill and Aussie Grill
And international, that's correct.
and International. Okay.
And
So
I'm in charge of just our casual dining portfolio. So Outback, Bonefish Grill, and Carrabba's Italian Grill are mine.
so you don't count Fleming's because that's fine dining, high end.
That's correct.
How do you define Fleming's?
Yes, fine dining.
Fine dining. It's a steakhouse, so
That's right.
with good wine
Yes, excellent wine.
and a feminine touch. Is that still Fleming's kind of marketing approach? It's a more woman-friendly steakhouse.
We certainly appeal to both men and women. You can get your 28-ounce New York strip, and you can also have a delicious 7-ounce sea bass. So we have a wide variety of cuisine that I would say appeals to all.
Right. So the dudes can get the sea bass and women can tuck into a 20-ounce steak if they want.
There you go.
That's right.
That is their choice, and I respect all of it. So how I'm talking to a Director of Menu Innovation and Strategy and a Vice President for Research and Development. So how do you define those roles? How are they different? How are they similar?
Go ahead, Becky.
So in my role, I actually work in our marketing department, and I work very closely with the research and development team. So as we develop ideas or any type of a platform that we're looking to roll out, whether it be an actual menu or a food and beverage promotion, we work closely with the R&D team to actually develop these items. And also under my umbrella is beverage R&D. So I have a smaller team that works just on the innovation around beverage for all of our casual dining brands.
And that's where a lot of the money comes from.
That's right.
Beverage and Bloomin' Onions. Highly, highly profitable.
Absolutely. I recommend it every time you come into an Outback.
Well, I mean, I don't know if there's any other company that's named for a side dish, but you are Bloomin' Brands.
That's right.
Onions, so that's fun. So how does it work, Becky? Do you and your team kind of see what's out there on the market and how Bloomin' Brands can best express that, join the conversation, and then you say to Ephraim, okay, this is what we want to do. How do we implement this across our system? Is that sort of how it works?
Yeah. So what's so amazing, I think, about Bloomin' Brands, especially with the casual dining brands, is we are founder driven, and we like to make sure that we keep each concept very true to how it began. So for Outback specifically, what are the items that are going to feel authentic for us to be offering? So if we take, just for example, our limited time offer we have right now, full on Aussie. With that specific platform, we knew we wanted to really lean into our Aussie heritage, because that's something that none of our competitors can do and be authentic about it. So how can we bring a little bit of Australia to Americans who maybe won't ever get the option to go to Australia, which is really based on the roots of how we started in the first place, as being a steakhouse that was different from all the other competitors at the time. And we want to continue that. So we started really just start thinking about what are items, and doing a lot of research around items that you can get in Australia, or in this case, there were items I had when I had visited Australia that I really thought were intriguing and things you didn't see over in the US. So for instance, the Aussie chook ribs being an item that I saw on menus in Australia, ordered them, these taste great, and coming back to R&D and saying, is this something that is possible for us to do? And our chefs really make that come to life.
And chook, for people who don't know, is Australian slang for chicken.
That's right. What's so ironic is in Australia, they were called chicken ribs, but we wanted to turn that into, okay, in America, we'll call them the chook ribs.
And they weren't actually the ribs of chickens, were they? They were thigh.
That's correct.
They were. So what you're doing, which is a chicken thigh, is what the Australians call chicken ribs. Is that right?
That's right.
So it's good to know that it's not just Americans who have difficulty with anatomy.
That's right.
Thigh is not a rib. A boneless wing is not a thing.
Yeah.
For brand positioning, you guys do that, and I'm trying to accept it as much as of a literalist as I am sometimes. If you cut a thigh to look like a rib and you call it a rib, I guess I'm just going to have to go with it. I mean, at least it's not a cauliflower wing, which, again, cauliflower can't fly. So
that's right.
So Ephraim, tell me about these Aussie chook ribs.
So it truly is a rib eating experience, and our supplier cuts them specifically for us with our specification, and then we slow smoke them, and then we char grill them and toss them in our delicious sweet and tangy barbecue sauce, and then we hit it with our smoky aioli, and then finish it with our Fresno chili. So when you think about the flavor explosion with this rib, with sweet and tangy and smoky, and that bright fruitiness of that Fresno chili, it's really craveable. And frankly, that's what Outback Steakhouse is all about, is craveable comeback flavors that you can only find at the Outback Steakhouse.
So was there any challenge in developing that? I mean, did you have to get with your suppliers and be like, okay, I need it to be shaped in this specific way? And you probably do that with everything you develop. That you need. We
do, and it's just interesting to think that the chicken thigh in this country is really underutilized, and most people don't realize that it's got a greater fat and flavor and moisture. And so we're really capitalizing on that because it truly is a better eating experience. And like Becky said, it's ubiquitous in the market in Australia, and they do call them chicken thighs and barbecue chicken thighs, what have you. But we're sticking to our chook slang because that's our irreverent attitude with Outback. And so, yeah, developing this spec, it really wasn't that difficult. We do have our specs as far as length and size and weight, so we can have consistency in cooking and of course eating.
Great. And you have that, and you also have a seasonal barramundi topped with crab, right?
We sure do, and lemon butter.
Mm.
Yeah, that one's really fun because we like to call that one fish with attitude, which it also is just kind of Outback. We like to have fun. We don't want to be a pretentious steakhouse, which I think a lot of steakhouses get that type of vibe to them. But how can you come in and have fun, but have high quality food? So this was fun because that fish is native to the waters of Australia, but then being able to kind of play off of the tenacity that this fish has by kind of giving a little fun staying around it.
I forgot that barramundi's Australian, although I imagine that the ones you use are farm raised in the US because we have barramundi farms here. Are you allowed to tell me about that, or is that a secret?
It's a secret. Thanks for asking.
I respect that. And there's a whiskey apple cocktail, which I guess it was your thing, Becky, right?
That's right. So this is a cocktail. You go to a bar in Australia, you're going to see a whiskey apple, which typically they would do whiskey and a fresh pressed green apple juice. So we did a spin on that with a Granny Smith apple puree, but with Granny Smith apples actually being by happenstance, they started in Australia by Granny Smith herself, and now they're all over the world. It was just a really great way to tell that story also about the Granny Smith and how it came to the US. And it is absolutely delicious. So even if someone out there, if you think you're not a whiskey drinker, I insist that you try this one because you're going to love it.
Well, I am a whiskey drinker, so
yes,
it sounds great. It's just Jameson Irish whiskey, Granny Smith apple, citrus juices, and club soda, right?
That's right. Refreshing.
I would drink that all day long. So what is your process for developing stuff? Was it like I said, that the marketing team thinks up what they need and then the development team develops it? I imagine you guys hang out and have conversations too, as much as.
Oh, absolutely.
And
yeah, it's a great collaboration between the two because our chefs have ideas. Once you give them a platform and talk about it, they start thinking of their own ideas. The product team, we also bring in our brand team and other team members just because we think, more minds are going to come up with more ideas, and then we really hone in on the ones that we think are great and start to actually develop them, either they be a beverage or a food item.
And as you said, you like all of the brands to have their own identities.
Yes.
So is there a different process for developing stuff for Carrabba's or Bonefish Grill, or is it kind of the same thing but different, knowing that you're talking to a different market?
Yeah, the process is the same. It would just be around what we're looking to do for each brand. So each one of our brands has a limited time offer. The timing of those is different depending on which brand you are speaking of, but as far as our innovation process, we don't really deviate much from that. But there are those times just on a whim that, if the chefs are working on something, or let's say I have an idea, I'll take it straight to the chefs, or they'll bring it forward also. And we'll say, we don't want to wait on this. This is something we should do now and take a look at. And those are always fun too, because typically that's going to be a really home run because we're very passionate about it and we want to get it going quickly, especially with something where like this is on the cusp of being a trend, or it's right there as the trends are starting to happen. Like we like to be on the forward side of that versus on the back end of it. But keeping in mind in casual dining, you can't be too far forward, because we want the masses and we want it to have broad appeal.
Right. Yeah. Everything needs to earn its place on the menu, right? It needs to.
That's right.
2 percentage points of sales,
And Brett, I'm sorry to jump in. You know what Becky was referring to is that's the beauty of our company, is that we are such a collaborative environment. We've got 5 brands under one roof with chefs that have leadership in all of those brands, but we truly collaborate as a team and share ideas as well as best practices across those brands. There's no brand creep. Every brand has its own specific brand identity. We do share, and you know, we really pull all the knowledge of 227 years of tenure at this company with 12 chefs under the roof. Really expands the output of what we can do as far as creativity and flavors.
That's a lot of years. And probably, how big is your development team? Or is that a trade secret?
No, it's not a trade secret. We're going to have 13 people in the R&D team as of right now.
And Bonefish Grill currently has like a seafood brunch. Is that right?
Working on the brunch, yes, sir.
And
that's right. We just launched brunch in January, at the end of January, which has been very exciting for us. And you know, we were able to introduce some new menu items and also even some new beverage items so that we could have this shareable, fun, social experience during brunch time. And it's been really exciting seeing just every Sunday how it just gets better and better. So we're loving it.
Well, isn't this a relaunch of brunch? I feel like you guys had brunch a few years ago.
We did once before, yes, and we've brought it back in a new way, and I would say even a more exciting way. So there'll be more to come. Like I think brunch, we've just started that journey, and we'll continue to innovate around it as well. So make sure you keep stopping by because you never know what you're going to see.
Oh, that's exciting. And so how is this brunch different from all other brunches?
I think with us for Bonefish, it's a lot of the making it much more social. So let's say from a beverage perspective, we have a lot of the single drinks, you know, your common staples, your Bloody Mary, your mimosa, but we want to make sure we keep it fun with some drinks you can only get at Bonefish, like our blackberry red sangria and our sparkling mango sangria are signature to us. So now, why not now come in and get a picture of it, share it with your friends or family, and those have been really awesome additions to our menu there. And with the food items, not just doing what we did before on our menu, but innovating around it. So the frittatas and having the different options you have there, and doing something a little bit more innovative around French toast by making kind of more like a brulee type French toast stick using Grand Marnier has been just a fun way to have French toast.
Yeah, I just pulled up the menu. You got a bacon and cheddar frittata, a caprese frittata with mozzarella, pesto, basil, tomatoes, crab and fontina cheese frittata, and as you said, the Grand Marnier French toast sticks, plus a bunch of shareable pictures.
Yeah.
And is it only on Sunday, your brunch?
It's only on Sundays.
And how's it going?
It's going awesome. Really great. Our guests that knew brunch before are so happy that brunch is back. And we also just have a whole new group that are excited to try Bonefish brunch for the first time.
Well, and there's a lot of talk these days about how to get people to actually like put on their shoes and go outside, eat in a restaurant rather than having it delivered. You need to create an experience, a reason for everybody to go out.
Absolutely.
Is that part of your strategy when you're developing new menu items? Or entirely new day parts, like with your Sunday brunch?
Oh, absolutely. I think even just going back to full on Aussie, you know, who's had an Aussie chook rib before? Not many people, right? So something that you're like, wow, I've got to go out and try that. I've never had that. And I think a trend that we will continue to lean into for Outback Steakhouse is this exploration of flavors, getting items you can't have anywhere else but Outback, you know, and using that same strategy for other brands also. But Outback in particular, it's been really fun to have items that that people, when they hear about something new, they want to go have it so they can tell others that they've tried it. Oh, you haven't tried it, I have, or I've had it. You got to come with me and try this because it's blowing me away. And so we'll continue to lean into that exploration. And even as Chef Ephraim talked about, us having really bold flavors. And even if you think about how he described our Aussie chook ribs as, having the sweet and the tangy and the flavors of the Fresno chilies. The word that I think is really fun, I think it'll likely get overused this year. It'll be a new buzzword, but spicy, with something being sweet and spicy. That's going to be some really fun ways that we're going to lean into flavors, because there's just something about that that's really hitting with people. So we like to talk a lot about spicy, and the Aussie chook ribs are a perfect example of that.
Well, and that's definitely a huge flavor trend, the hot spicy.
Yes.
People are into it. I don't know if I'm going to say spicy ever, but that's just me. I'm a traditionalist. But Bonefish Grill also has a reputation of doing things that you're not going to get anywhere else. In fact, I think as far as casual dining goes, it's one of the most cutting edge of brands.
Yeah, I think, Brett, when you think about the combination of our amazing food at Bonefish, augmented with the mixology, right? Becky and her team really, really specialize in not just bartending, right? It's true mixology, where we've got amazing flavors and combinations and true creativity that really pulls together the experience. And all of our brands are experiential. And so when you think about going and having an amazing brunch or a fresh piece of fish at Bonefish, and then capping it off with one of our crafted cocktails that were curated just for you, it really does enhance the experience, and it makes it memorable.
How much mixing can you do at casual dining restaurants like Bonefish Grill, and Outback and Carrabba's? Is there a lot of juice squeezing and stuff going on?
So from a bar perspective, I would say we have some things that are common across all three brands, but then we also want to stay true to the flavors of each bar also. So that might be a little bit more elevated at Bonefish Grill. Outback Steakhouse, we're coming on strong into the cocktail scene with our $7 cocktails, and that really being our messaging, that you can get a high quality cocktail at an awesome price of $7 all day, every day in our restaurants. And that has been a real win for us. Because as you mentioned, Brett, the money is in the beer and the wine and the liquor. So how do we, if people are going to leave their homes and come into our restaurants, we want to have a really appealing beverage offering for them. And especially when it comes to the cocktail scene, so that they want to give a cocktail a try while they're in the restaurant.
So what are some of your popular $7 cocktails?
Well, we have our staples that have been on our menu since the beginning, which are the Gold Coast Salsarita and the Wallaby Darn. And those still to this day are two of our top performing cocktails on the menu.
The Wallaby Darn?
Yes, the Wallaby Darn.
I should know what that is, but I don't. So why don't you tell me?
Oh my goodness. Yes, so it's a frozen drink, and it has frozen peaches. We have La Marca Prosecco in it, peach schnapps, some Svedka vodka. We blend all that together with some peach smoothie mix, and it is absolutely delightful. And to this day, it is one of our number one selling cocktails.
$7.
$7.
I would drink that.
Yeah.
And what else? I interrupted you. There were some other.
Well, I would say what's been, we recently launched last year the blueberry lavender lemonade, and this also is a drink that is Aussie inspired, as we call it. So many people don't know this, but in Australia, they have some of the largest lavender fields in the world, and it's in Tasmania. So we played off that to make a blueberry lavender lemonade, and we actually put lavender in the drink, and we actually garnish it with lavender sprigs, and it has quickly become a favorite of our guests. It's right up there now at the top with the Wallaby Darn and the Gold Coast Rita. So it's been exciting to give some new items to our guests, and then also let them know how those tie to Australia. Last year, we also launched the Pina Koala, which is basically our riff on a pina colada, except for it's a martini that you can sip on. And we put a little edible pina koala disc on top of it. It's super cute. Definitely, you got to take a picture of it whenever you try one, Brett. And it's delicious.
Well, and it seems, I imagine that blueberry lavender lemonade is also kind of bluish and purplish.
That's right.
So it's beautiful.
Yes.
You want to take the pictures and post it on the gram or do a TikTok, which is increasingly important when it comes to menu development. I mean, Ephraim, do you have to think about visual appeal when you're developing new menu items?
100%. I mean, if you think about the colors, right? It's indicative to have brown, steak, potato, French fries, right? And so we're constantly thinking about colors and textures. And obviously, as a guest, you eat with your eyes first. And so we're all about balance, whether it's textures or flavors or moistures and height. All of those components are part of the whole package when you're creating an amazing dish. And speaking of amazing dishes, I did want to mention our Tim Tam cake, which is something that we're really, as Becky said earlier, we're really pulling in our Australian heritage, and you can't even find a Tim Tam unless you're in Australia or get it from Amazon. And that cookie was developed in 1964, and it just screams Australia. So when you want to have an amazing chocolate mousse brownie, chocolate topped with caramel sauce and that Tim Tam cake on top of it, you're only going to find that at the Outback Steakhouse, and it is craveable.
I think I might have had a Tim Tam when I was in New Zealand, but I don't remember. And I know Australia and New Zealand are different places, but they trade. So they
definitely do.
They must have bought their Tim Tams from there. But what is a Tim Tam?
Tim Tam it's a biscuit. So the company is about 164 years old, and it started from a Scottish man, and he migrated to Australia in the 1900s, and they had a steamed biscuit company. And so what a Tim Tam is it's a chocolate. There's all different types of flavors now, but the original was a milk chocolate enrobed wafer or biscuit, and it's just a cookie covered in chocolate, and it's phenomenal. And then it's really works well with our chocolate brownie. We do a thunder base and then a chocolate mousse, peanut butter mousse. It's just a really light, fluffy, creamy, velvety experience, and then you get that crunch and that sweetness from that Tim Tam cake, and it works really well together.
That sounds delicious. And it's only $10.49, it says on my list here. I'm sure it varies a little by location, but around $10. What a deal. Have you guys ever done anything with Vegemite? Whenever I think Australia, I think Vegemite, but I don't know if the American audience is.
We have worked with it. Yeah, we work with it, and there's, to your point, the American audience is, it's hard to present a guest a dish that they're not familiar with, and we push the limits with trying to introduce new and exotic ingredients, if you will. But we haven't launched it, no, but we've certainly worked with it. It's a unique ingredient.
Now I'm just thinking maybe you should rim a cocktail glass with some Vegemite.
You never know what you're going to see, Brett.
Well, as I understand it, you guys have some new menu items that, since we're recording this in advance, we can talk about as long as we don't release this.
I know. I've been dying to tell you about this.
So
as I mentioned earlier, we are about to turn 35. It will be our 35th birthday on March 18th, and we really want to celebrate in a big way. So as we were thinking about how we're going to celebrate our anniversary, we did something really fun, and we reached out to our guests through social platforms and asked them if you could bring back any menu item, food or beverage, to the Outback menu that we had before, what would it be? And we got a really great response from our guests. And what they didn't know is we were going to take those top items and actually develop a menu out of it and bring those items back for 1 week only, our birthday week, so that we can celebrate with our guests too. So we are bringing back items like the walkabout soup, which is a creamy onion soup that we make in-house that was on the original 1988 menu for Outback. We're bringing back our wedge salad, our Aussie twisted ribs, our Toowoomba pasta, the Alice Springs sirloin, and 2 phenomenal desserts, the Cinnamon Oblivion and our Sydney Simple Sundae. We're going to continue talking about the Wallaby Darn and the Gold Coast Rita that are still in the menu since day one. and really have a really fun time with our guests and let them experience the items that maybe they remember or that they've never had before. And even our menu is going to be printed as an actual boomerang. So it's going to be really fun for our guests to experience this. As we say, we're bringing back our Aussie faves like a boomerang.
I get it. So
Yes.
are these going to be exactly the same as they were when they were first launched? Or have they been updated a little bit to suit the modern palate?
No, they are the same items. We're using the same. It's really fun. So it will be as our guests remembered them before. And some of these items, the Aussie twisted ribs was a more recent item that we had on the menu and took off or as a limited time offering. But then there are the items that have been on since 1988 that have come and gone in the past, and our guests still really crave those. But they will taste them and remember them just as they were before.
So you had all these recipes archived.
That's correct.
What
Yeah,
was it?
we still serve some of these items internationally. We've
Oh,
got restaurants that are 25, 28 years old internationally that we very, pardon me, we've made very little changes to the original because in that market, those guests love that food. So, we in Korea, I think we served over 440,000 toowoomba pastas a month out of 100 restaurants. So there's a lot of items that we historically have changed in this country, but we've maintained that internationally as well.
Yeah, and you said it's a Toowoomba pasta?
Toowoomba.
Toowoomba, what is that?
Toowoomba.
That is a place in Australia.
Uh-huh.
So
And
we name a lot of dishes after fun Australian city names.
Sure, but what exactly is it? What does the pasta look like?
Oh, okay. The pasta. So this actually it's a tomato cream base with our fettuccine, and we have our sauteed shrimp in it with mushrooms. We have scallions. It's absolutely delicious. Like all that tossed together topped with Parmesan cheese. And it was something that really rose to the top. Our guests were like, we miss the Toowoomba pasta. We use that same topping currently on our salmon, and that's one of our very popular items on our menu. So our guests are just saying we would like it to come back in the pasta form, and we're doing it.
So if they don't want carbohydrates and they want omega-3 fatty acids, they get it on their salmon. And
That's
if they
right.
want pasta, they get it on their pasta.
Yes.
And twisted ribs, what are they?
Oh, okay. This one is really fun. So this is our ribs that we currently have. And what we do is we fry them, and we actually use our same flour that we use for the bloomin' onion. So it has that great comeback flavor to them. And we serve it with our spicy homemade pickles, and we even drizzle it with our bloomin' onion sauce. So it's packed with flavor, super good. And it was fun to see this one our guests really talk about this one because it is one that was more recent versus further out, like some of the items that our guests were asking for it to come back. So I was actually really pleased to see that, wow, they loved this limited time offer. So they're going to get it for 1 week, March 20th through the 26th.
March 20th through the 26th.
Yes.
Maybe you should take that bloomin' onion seasoning and put it on your chook ribs, and then you have another thing.
Look at you, Brad. Look at you.
I'm waiting for my bosses to fire me, and so I'm practicing being a consultant.
All right, come on.
But I'm not going to invoice you. You guys can just run with this.
We appreciate that.
We are about out of time, but are there any other secrets you want to reveal about all of your brands?
Well, what I would say, I don't think it's a secret, but what Bloomin' Brands, we are going to stay true to how we started in our roots, but not slowing down on the innovation. So we have the classics that our guests love. They're going to continue to come in for those, but to make sure they're coming by frequently because we always have something new up our sleeve in all of our brands, and it's really fun. And for anyone who has loved Outback or hasn't been in a while, you've got to come back during Boomerang Week because it's going to be really fun. We're going to be celebrating big time. It's party time. I know I like to celebrate my birthday for at least a week. So we're going to at least do that for Outback Steakhouse. And you got to come try it out. And I would order all of the Boomerang items because, they're only here for a limited time, a very limited time.
Order them all. Bring your friends or just eat them yourself.
And
Yes.
remember, Brett, no rules, just right.
No rules, just right.
Cheers to that, mate.
Wow, you guys have been well primed. And it was really nice meeting both of you, Becky Boyd and Ephraim Cutler. I hope it is the first conversation of many, and we can hang out some more, possibly in real life sometime.
Come to
I
town.
would love that, Brett.
Ice down here.
Yes, I'm sure. It's chilly up here in New York, but it is winter, so you expect that. Thanks again for your time, and I hope
Great to meet you.
Thank you.